Whether you're liberal or not, we're going to do everything we can to help the citizens of your state, and you're trying to avoid that.
Mr.
So don't
Chairman,
talk to me. Don't insult me publicly. I will follow the law, but I will not keep that as a separate grant entity. You and I can disagree all day long on what the law is.
What if the real crime isn't the violence, the chaos, or the crime rates we hear about every day? What if it's something far darker, hidden right in front of us, under layers of lies and secrecy?
You said yourself you're very concerned about foreign influence on our government.
Senator, it is wildly offensive that you would accuse President Trump of not protecting American interest in our country when he is the president that has shut down our borders, unlike Joe Biden. That's being consolidated into the Office of Justice Programs. I'm not going to cut, let me answer, I'm not going to cut anything that's going to hurt violence against
not
women.
my question.
It will eliminate
I'm asking, just for your information, Attorney General.
President Trump has done everything
instead
to
of
make
changing
America
the
safe,
topic,
and you asked me
actually
the question,
answer the question.
and keep America safe.
The truth about the Epstein files has been buried for too long. Promises of transparency vanished, and those in power have pulled every string to keep it locked away. But what are they hiding? The role of the Attorney General in the United States has always been one of immense responsibility. As the chief law enforcement officer of the country, the Attorney General is entrusted with upholding the Constitution and ensuring that justice is served impartially. However, in recent years, the integrity of this position has been called into question, particularly with regard to the actions of certain individuals in office. One key issue that has arisen is the perception that the Department of Justice, DOJ, has in some cases been reduced to serving the interests of the president and his political agenda, rather than the law itself. Historically, the DOJ has operated under the principle that the Attorney General should remain independent from political pressure and be dedicated solely to the enforcement of the law. This ideal has been tested over the years, but never more so than during the Trump administration. The appointment of certain individuals to high-ranking positions within the DOJ raised concerns about the degree to which the department was willing to bend to the will of the president. There were multiple instances during which it seemed that the DOJ was more focused on advancing the president's personal and political interests than on upholding the rule of law. For example, the actions of then Attorney General William Barr sparked significant controversy. Barr, who was appointed by President Trump, was widely criticized for his handling of the Mueller report, which investigated potential interference in the 2016 election. Many critics argued that Barr had acted as a personal lawyer for the president rather than as an impartial law enforcer. This raised serious questions about whether the DOJ was still acting in accordance with its mandate to protect the American people and uphold justice, or whether it had become an arm of the president's political agenda. The concerns around Barr's tenure were not limited to his handling of the Mueller report. There were also questions about his role in clearing the way for the president to deploy federal forces in response to protests following the killing of George Floyd in 2020. Critics claimed that Barr's actions were politically motivated, aimed at curbing the protests rather than addressing the systemic issues of police brutality and racial injustice that were at the heart of the demonstrations. This further fueled the narrative that the DOJ was being weaponized for political gain rather than serving as an independent arbiter of justice. The situation was compounded by the actions of other key figures in the Trump administration, including Rudy Giuliani, who served as the president's personal attorney. Giuliani's efforts to challenge the results of the 2020 presidential election were widely criticized as a blatant attempt to undermine democracy. His involvement in various legal challenges to the election results highlighted the blurred lines between legal representation and political advocacy. The fact that Giuliani, a former prosecutor, was so closely aligned with Trump's political ambitions raised serious questions about the ethics of his actions and the role of legal professionals in such a politically charged environment. This growing perception that the DOJ had become an instrument of the president's will is particularly troubling because of the foundational role the department plays in the American legal system. The DOJ is responsible for enforcing federal laws, investigating crimes, and representing the United States in legal matters. Its role in maintaining the integrity of the legal system is vital to ensuring that justice is served fairly and impartially. When the department is perceived to be operating in service of political interests rather than the law, it undermines public trust in the justice system. One of the most striking examples of this shift in the role of the DOJ came with the events surrounding the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. On that day, a mob of Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building in an attempt to prevent the certification of Joe Biden's electoral victory. The attack was a direct assault on the democratic process and the rule of law, and it was met with widespread condemnation from across the political spectrum. However, in the aftermath, some of Trump's allies attempted to downplay the significance of the attack and shift the narrative to focus on supposed issues with crime in Washington, D.C. This narrative, pushed by Trump and his supporters, aimed to distract from the true gravity of the situation by painting the Capitol as a city plagued by lawlessness. The goal seemed to be to redirect public attention away from the dangerous events of January 6th and towards a manufactured fear of crime in the nation's capital. This diversionary tactic was designed to shift the focus away from the real crisis at hand, a threat to the foundations of democracy itself. It is within this context that the role of the Attorney General becomes even more crucial. The Attorney General's duty is not only to uphold the law, but also to serve as a safeguard against the erosion of democratic institutions. This duty extends beyond simply enforcing laws. It also involves ensuring that the government acts in accordance with the Constitution and that power is not abused for political gain. When the DOJ is used as a political tool, it undermines the very principles of justice that it is supposed to protect. The actions of the Attorney General are critical in shaping public perceptions of the rule of law. In a functioning democracy, the justice system should be impartial, serving the interests of all citizens rather than a select few. When the Attorney General and the DOJ are seen as acting in service of the political agenda of the president, it sends a dangerous message about the state of the nation's commitment to justice and equality. This is why the work of state attorneys general is so important. While the federal attorney general's office may be compromised, state attorneys general are often seen as the last line of defense against the politicization of justice. These state-level officials are independent, elected by the people, and are meant to serve the interests of their constituents rather than any political party or agenda. They play a vital role in upholding the rule of law and ensuring that the actions of the federal government are checked by the law. State attorneys general, like those in Illinois, Massachusetts, and other states, have taken on increasing importance in the face of federal inaction. These individuals are tasked with defending the rights of their citizens, ensuring that the law is applied fairly, and protecting the public from political manipulation. They also have a duty to ensure that the state's legal system operates independently, free from external political pressure. In this sense, they serve as a counterbalance to the actions of the federal government, helping to preserve the integrity of the justice system. As the nation continues to grapple with various political and legal challenges, one of the most pressing issues is the secrecy surrounding certain high-profile figures and the files that could expose uncomfortable truths. A particular example of this is the so-called Epstein files, which have been the subject of much speculation and controversy. These files, believed to contain information about a network of influential people linked to Jeffrey Epstein's criminal activities, have remained largely sealed despite promises of transparency and public access. The question arises, why are these files being kept hidden, and what does it mean for the pursuit of justice? Jeffrey Epstein, a financier and convicted sex offender, was arrested in 2019 on charges of trafficking minors for sex. His death in a federal jail in August of the same year added fuel to the fire of conspiracy theories and suspicions that powerful figures were involved in his criminal activities. Epstein's ties to prominent individuals in politics, business, and entertainment have led many to believe that his network of associates includes some of the world's most influential people. The public outcry over his crimes has been matched by calls for accountability and justice for the victims. However, the road to uncovering the truth has been obstructed by a series of actions that raise questions about the transparency of the legal system. One of the most significant issues surrounding Epstein's case is the apparent reluctance of those in power to release crucial documents that could shed light on the full extent of his criminal activities. In the days following Epstein's arrest, President Donald Trump made public promises to release certain files related to Epstein's case, stating that the American people deserved to know the truth. The FBI and other law enforcement agencies also indicated that they were committed to investigating Epstein's connections and bringing those involved to justice. Yet, despite these assurances, the files have remained sealed, and the information contained within them has been kept out of public view. This reluctance to release the files has raised suspicions that there may be a deliberate cover-up to protect powerful individuals who were involved in Epstein's network. One of the most striking developments in this regard was the sudden and mysterious transfer of Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's associate and convicted accomplice, to a low-security Texas prison. Maxwell had been sentenced to serve time for her role in Epstein's sex trafficking operation. But her conditions in prison were suddenly altered, leading many to question whether she was being treated differently from other inmates. The prison she was moved to is known for its more relaxed rules, with a reputation for being less secure than other facilities. This raised concerns that Maxwell was being given special treatment, potentially in exchange for her silence or cooperation in a larger cover-up. The timing of Maxwell's transfer was particularly alarming. Just days before she was moved to the low-security prison, Maxwell had a secret meeting with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, a former criminal defense lawyer for Trump. The details of this meeting remain largely unknown, but the fact that it occurred behind closed doors has only fueled speculation about what was discussed. Within 48 hours of this meeting, Maxwell's conditions changed dramatically, leading many to believe that there was more to this transfer than a simple logistical decision. Was she being rewarded for withholding information about Epstein's associates, or was there a more sinister motive behind her sudden move? This question becomes even more urgent when we consider the broader implications of the Epstein case. The files that remain sealed could contain the names of individuals who were involved in Epstein's crimes, or who were complicit in his activities. These individuals could include high-ranking politicians, business leaders, and celebrities, people who have the power and influence to keep the truth hidden. If the files were to be released, it could have a devastating impact on the reputations and careers of those named, as well as potentially lead to criminal charges and further investigations. But the reluctance to release these files is not limited to the Trump administration. Former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, a close ally of Trump, has been accused of working to keep the Epstein files sealed, not only to protect the president, but to shield other powerful figures who were involved in Epstein's activities. Bondi's efforts to prevent the release of the client list have raised alarms about the potential for corruption and abuse of power. Critics argue that her actions have crossed the line from politics into outright obstruction of justice, as she appears to be using her position to protect those who may have committed serious crimes. Bondi's involvement in the Epstein case highlights a broader issue: the extent to which those in positions of power are willing to manipulate the justice system to protect their own interests. The legal system is supposed to serve as an impartial arbiter of justice, ensuring that all individuals are held accountable for their actions, regardless of their social or political standing. However, when powerful figures use their influence to block investigations and suppress evidence, it undermines the integrity of the system and erodes public trust in its ability to deliver justice. This cover-up is not just about protecting Trump or a small group of individuals. It is about maintaining the status quo for an entire network of elites who benefit from secrecy and corruption. The Epstein files contain information that could expose a vast web of connections between influential people who have used their power to evade accountability for their actions. These individuals, if named in the files, could face legal consequences, but more importantly, they could lose the power and influence that has allowed them to avoid prosecution in the past. The release of these files could be the first step towards dismantling a system that has protected the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. The fact that the files have been sealed and the public has been denied access to this crucial information is not just a matter of legal strategy, it is a direct assault on transparency and accountability. When the justice system is used to shield the guilty rather than to hold them accountable, it sends a dangerous message to the public. It tells them that justice is not for everyone, but only for those who have the power and resources to avoid it. This undermines the very foundation of the rule of law and threatens the democratic principles that the United States was built upon. The public's dissatisfaction with how the Epstein case has been handled is evident in recent polling, which shows that a majority of Americans believe Trump knew about Epstein's crimes before the investigation began. In fact, nearly 60% of Americans are dissatisfied with how Trump has dealt with the scandal, suggesting that the public is increasingly aware of the cover-up and is demanding action. The desire for transparency is palpable, and the continued suppression of the Epstein files only serves to heighten public suspicion and mistrust. The fight for justice in the Epstein case is far from over. The questions surrounding the sealed files, the mysterious transfer of Maxwell, and the efforts of individuals like Pam Bondi to block transparency are part of a larger pattern of obstruction that has plagued the investigation from the start. If these files are ever released, they have the potential to expose a network of corruption that spans multiple sectors of society. This would not only bring justice to the victims of Epstein's crimes, but also send a clear message that no one, regardless of their power or influence, is above the law.